Yeah, I'll react to that, sure.
I'm gonna say some dirty words.
Uh-oh. Alright. I do have to admit that if I see a recommendation with even just one emote on it, I tend to want to click it more, because I'm like, hey, 2 people want it. So, and I really want to do this anyway. And I love Mr. Beat, so a lot of reasons to do it. Whoa. Capitalism, socialism, and communism compared. Okay. Original link to the video, top of the description. Below that link to the Discord. Click on it, send it right over there. I'd love to have you. Good. Let's go. Let me just fix the user enter. Yeah, let's do it.
I'm Mr. Beat, and now I'm gonna say some dirty words.
Hey, man.
Hey, will you stop censoring me?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Now, capitalism, socialism, and communism.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Watch your language. I am offended.
Anyway, let's first hear what the critics have to say about capitalism.
You're a very, very successful, very rich filmmaker, apart from everything else you do. In a way,
I'm offended.
that is capitalism. I mean, you've got a business.
Is it really?
You have a company.
Oh.
Well, isn't it in its purest sense, isn't it?
What pure? There's nothing pure about capitalism.
Is there not, though?
It's not capitalism.
Unfortunately, over time, capitalism has spun wildly out of control, transforming rapidly from a force for positive social change into a brutal system of oppression that's holding humanity back and destroying billions of lives.
So how many people in contemporary society, let alone across capitalism's long history, die due to this economic system? Capitalism is global, and around the world 8 million people die from lack of clean drinking water. Roughly another 8 million people die from hunger, and on top of that, another 3 million die from vaccine-treatable diseases. Adding in room for error, let's just take it to a grand total of 20 million deaths per year due to the lack of food, water, and vaccines.
Nice. Now let's hear all the great things people have to say about socialism.
Socialism has failed every place that it has been attempted.
How many people under 30 and 40 know so little about the legacy of socialism and the suffering that it's caused?
Seeing a trend.
Socialism is grim, it's old, and it offers you no tomorrow.
Socialism is going to win. What does that mean, and what is socialism?
Well, it could win at the polls. That's the problem. It's very intoxicating to people who don't know any better.
Right.
And the interesting thing
rich
about
people, they have too much money.
Yeah. The interesting thing about socialism is that no matter how many times it fails, people expect it to succeed.
Now let's look at the facts about socialism, shall we? Venezuela, a rich country blessed with bountiful natural resources, is now a hellhole.
What happened in Venezuela? They call that democratic socialism, but they don't have toilet paper, and it's less equal than ever.
As we're now seeing in Venezuela, all of the promises that the left told us and we warned against now are shattered. People are starving to death.
Venezuela.
Okay, I'm seeing a trend. I'm sure Mr. Beat's gonna capitalism is fine, there's no problems with it. Communism, socialism, awful. Or communism, socialism, fine, nothing wrong with it. Capitalism, awful. I'm assuming it's more.
Hey, okay. What about communism?
Why is communist so much less a term of revulsion than Nazi? Communists killed 70 million people in China, more than 20 million people in the Soviet Union, not including about 5 million Ukrainians, and almost 1 out of every 3 Cambodians. And communists enslaved entire nations in Russia, Vietnam, China, Eastern Europe, North Korea, Cuba, and much of Central Asia. They ruined the lives of well over 1 billion people.
Guevara, in the name of communism, killed lots of people. He said, we executed many people by firing squad without knowing if they are fully guilty.
But why is it that the atrocities of communism are almost completely ignored by our teachers and dismissed as just a blip in history by most? 100 million people perished under communist dictators in the last century.
All right then, communism. So it appears there are a lot of strong opinions about these three words, but there is confusion about what they mean. These three words have also been weaponized. People often use these three words to attack and marginalize others. People misuse these three words. They conflate them with other words. For example, often people seamlessly interchange communism and totalitarianism, or capitalism and fascism, as if they mean the exact same thing. Dude, you're mixing an economic system and political system, for crying out loud. And there's also this false dichotomy.
There are some, Democrats mostly, who believe socialism should replace capitalism. Do you think that's ever going to happen?
Replace capitalism with socialism? Who the heck is proposing that?
You think that's ever going to happen?
You know what? I'm starting to get a little worked up about this. Let's look at some dictionary definitions of these.
Getting deep. All right.
What? I'm starting to get a little worked up about this. Let's look at some dictionary definitions of these three terms, all right?
Guy.
I need a dictionary. Can anybody give me a dictionary, please?
Yes, sir. Webster.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, now let's just take this dictionary here and...
If I had him as a teacher, I had good teachers actually growing up. I'm not going to act like I had bad teachers, but he seems like such a great teacher.
Look at the definition of capitalism and put that up on the screen, okay? Capitalism, an economic system characterized by private or corporate ownership of capital goods by investments that are determined by private decision and by prices, production, and the distribution of goods that are determined mainly by competition in a free market.
An economic system characterized by private or corporate ownership. Okay, so private ownership has to be one person, private or corporate ownership of capital goods. By investments that are determined by I just read that. All right, an economic system characterized by private or corporate ownership of capital goods by investments that are determined by private decision and by prices, production, and the distribution of goods that are determined mainly by competition in the free market. All right.
Okay, so let's break this down. First of all, it says economic system, meaning a way resources get around and the way people trade stuff by private or corporate ownership. Okay, let's just say private ownership of capital goods. Okay, what are capital goods? Goods used to make other goods. All right, let's go on. By investments. So basically, folks trying to get rich that are determined by private decisions, prices, production and distribution of goods determined by competition in a free market. Okay, let's simplify that. Folks trying to get rich by competing with each other. Everything else is implied, isn't it? If you are competing in a free market, there is no government stopping you when trying to make money. You are making decisions on prices, production, and distribution in order to make a profit, and you are competing with others for customers. This is capitalism.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Capitalism? More like late-stage capitalism. It will die soon, you greedy scum of the earth capitalist pig. All you care about is yourself.
Come at me, bro. Anyway, capitalism has been around for hundreds of years. By the 1500s, it really caught on, and there has been no turning back. A word that has been even more of an insult lately, more so than capitalism, is the word socialism.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. So now you're a dirty socialist? You know, socialism killed 100 million people. I mean, Venezuela? Hello?
Well, crap. We've got three different definitions here in the dictionary, okay? Socialism. Number one, a theory or system of social organization that advocates the vesting of the ownership and control of the means of production and distribution of capital, land, etc. in the community as a whole. Number two, procedure or practice in accordance with this theory. Okay, then what we don't...
The theory or system of social government, this theory or system of social organization that advocates the vesting of the ownership and control of the means of production and the distribution of capital, land, etc., in the community as a whole. Or
practice in accordance with this theory. Okay, then, well, we don't have to really go over this definition then, do we? And number 3, in Marxist theory, the stage following capitalism and the transition of a society to communism, characterized by the imperfect implementation of collectivist principles. So first, it's a theory or a system. Why is socialism considered a theory and capitalism not? Probably because it's never been fully practiced. But it is another economic system. But instead of private or corporate ownership, we are talking about the community as a whole as the owner. Fully practiced. But it is another economic system. But instead of private or corporate ownership, we are talking about the community as a whole as the owners. With capitalism, it's about owning capital goods. But with socialism, it's about owning the production, distribution, land, everything, and everyone owns that. The community as a whole makes economic decisions, not the individual. Based on that definition, have we ever had that? No, not really. Not since farming became a thing, at least. Now, that third definition is the historical definition of...
This is the interesting one. Okay, so Marxist, and I always have so much more, like when I think of Marx, it went in the time he was living in, I completely get, child labor laws weren't a thing, and regulation on like how good the meat you sold in a butcher shop and stuff like that. Okay. The stage following capitalism. Okay.
Social.
All right. So socialism is what Marx thought was what would have to happen to switch from capitalism to communism. It's like you got to have some socialism. Like that process of transitioning will have a socialist structure. Okay.
And often leads to even more confusion about what socialism actually means. Marxist theory? Yeah. Socialism, even though it had origins throughout human history, was first articulated by two dudes named Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Get it? Marxist, because it was named after him? To this day, Engels is still mad it's called Marxism and not Engelism, by the way. Anyway, the two criticized capitalism and said it would eventually be overthrown by a new economic system, aka socialism, and eventually communism. Socialism was just a transition from capitalism to communism. Marx and Engels said socialism would consist of everybody owning the means of production, and that the workers would control and manage it. By the way, Marx is the reason why we even have the terms socialism and communism.
Communism? Don't even try to talk about communism, you un-American commie. I always knew you were a red. You probably are a spy for the Soviet Union, aren't you?
But I have to give a definition to educate the viewer.
You'd have to do a whole lot more living in a communist society.
Well, not necessarily. So the dictionary says, communism. Number 1, a system in which goods are owned in common and are available to all as needed. 2, a theory advocating elimination of private property. Now remember, that's communism with a lowercase c. So, pretty similar to socialism, ain't it? Again, it's both a system and a theory. And again, a theory originally by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Goods are owned in common, meaning you take what you want and you share everything. And yeah, no private property. Pretty ambitious and unrealistic in this day and age. Now, have we ever seen communism in practice? Well, we've seen it try.
I do feel like communism has so, and again, I'm learning, but so much faith in humanity. Like, I am just not that optimistic. Like, it sounds great. Like, take what you need. Don't be, greedy. Stop thinking in this me versus you attitude. Start thinking about the well-being of everyone. And that's such an awesome idea. But I just don't trust us. I just think that this is a very optimistic view of people. And maybe I'm being too pessimistic, but I don't think I am. but doesn't.
Now, have we ever seen communism in practice? Well, we've seen it tried, but it failed miserably. It needed totalitarianism, and I don't think Marx would have been a fan of the Soviet Union or China because he wanted a stateless society.
That's what a communist would say, you dirty socialist.
Anyway, let's review, shall we? Capitalism is an economic...
Sorry, okay.
Anyway, let's review, shall we? Capitalism is an economic system in which there's private ownership of capital goods and competition in a free market. Socialism is an economic system, but also a social and political theory where the means of production is owned by the community as a whole. This usually means the government has to step in, which is why you hear libertarian-type folks freak out about it. Communism is an economic system, but also a social and political theory where private property is completely gone.
Guys, question. So socialism, socialism is what countries or societies do when they want to get to communism. So socialism has been implemented a few times. It's just it always failed to reach communism. Is that fair?
Social and political theory where private property is completely gone and we share everything. Cool?
Yeah. I thought he was just going to leave me there.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. Those three words have been tainted over the years, and their definitions have morphed and evolved to a point where they almost are meaningless, okay? They aren't always just talking about economics. Karl Marx was talking about a political upheaval just as much as he was talking about an economic one, which is why it's better to learn about economic systems in a more accurate way. In reality, when looking at factors of production or what goes into producing stuff, there are 4 economic systems. Number 1, traditional economy. Customs and traditions guide the factors of production. It's informal, and there's usually no currency. Number 2, command economy. It's top-down. A central authority, usually the government, guides the factors of production. There is usually little input from the people. Number 3, market economy. I mean, capitalism in its purest form, basically. Consumers generally guide the factors.
Wait a second.
Top down. A central authority, usually the government, guides the factors of production.
Well, if it's a central authority, I'm nitpicking on something here. If it's a central authority, how can it not be the government? If it's guiding, doesn't that make it the government?
There is usually little input from the people. Number 3, market economy. I mean, capitalism in its purest form, basically. Consumers generally guide the factors of production. It's bottom up. And number 4, mixed economy. A mix of all the other 3, man. And guess what? It's what the majority of the world has. Sometimes the government steps in to try to manage the economy. Sometimes it's a completely free market. Sometimes it's even based on traditional values.
Because there's a difference between a public good and a commodity. Can you explain to me the difference between public goods and a commodity?
Well, in economics, a public good is a good that is, I believe, non-excludable and non-rivalrous. So
exactly.
Yeah.
It's also...
Sorry, I messed up there. Sorry.
So
exactly.
Yeah.
It's also important to know the difference between the 4 categories of goods in economics. It looks like this on a table. So we've got rivalrous, meaning if someone consumes a good, it prevents someone else from consuming it. It's a zero-sum game. Excludable, meaning you can prevent consumers who haven't paid from accessing it. So on the table here, we've got private goods. Examples include food, clothing, cars, personal electronics that are excludable and rivalrous. And we've got club goods like cinemas, private parks, satellite TV that are excludable and non-rivalrous. And then we've got non-excludable. This column here has the rivalrous, which is common goods, fish stocks, timber, coal as a
Okay, so this means like so obviously like a TV, right? So just because there are multiple televisions that each of you can get, right, it doesn't mean it's not a private rivalrous good. So something that is well, then wouldn't this be okay. All right. Okay, I get it. All right.
has the rivalrous, which is common goods, fish stocks, timber, coal as examples.
So if there's one TV in one movie theater, you can both use a movie theater. Only one of you can get the TV. Okay.
Which is common goods, fish stocks, timber, coal as examples, and public goods here with the non-excludable, non-rivalrous, such as air and national defense. I mean, the public goods spot here, let's pay close attention to that area. Many people do start to freak out and call somebody a socialist when people want to add things to the public goods category, such as healthcare. Is healthcare a public good? That's a great debate to have, but one for another video, as it's time to wrap this baby up. So there you have it, the difference between capitalism, socialism, and communism.
Well, I think you're a fascist, actually.
Nope, that's another video I made. And remember, when people use those three words, ask them what they mean when they say it, because chances are their definitions are all over the place. Thanks for watching. A shout out to my newest Patreon supporter, Saud Akouari, who pledged at the George Washington level.
Awesome video. I love Mr. Beat. Every time I watch him, I love him even more. He's just such a especially in nowadays, it is so difficult to find people who you don't just assume of having some sort of bent, I guess. He's amazing. I love him. Great video. And so the socialism being the transition from capitalism to communism is a big thing I learned here. And my views on both is that it seems like, and this is where I guess I'll see some arguments or what you think, is that capitalism seems to be the kind of tried and true, and by tried and true, I don't mean it's perfect. I just mean like it clearly functions, you know, as with inequalities and bad things for sure, but it's not a theory in that, you know, it's actually been proven to work in a society. And I don't want to get caught up on, oh, you think it works in society? Well, let me tell you all the things that it doesn't work. That's not what I'm saying. That I'm just saying like it's an actual thing, whereas communism is something that is just an idea and it's never been practiced. And so at some point when you try and implement, so I'm not saying that, oh, like you said, look at Venezuela, that means communism sucks, or look at North Korea or China or whatever, USSR. And I think it's okay to say, just because these nations or countries, whatever, tried to implement communism and it didn't end up bad, that therefore communism will always end up that way. I think that's silly, but it's also silly to not recognize failed attempts at reaching communism and not factoring that into how well you believe in it, I guess. So I think the best thing we can do is not just tear down everything and risk. Like, for instance, when he said in the beginning about the water.
Adding in room for error, let's just take it to a grand total of...
He's like, all right, how many people die of capitalism? Well, and then he just takes
roughly
water.
8 million people die from hunger, and on top of that...
As if he's saying capitalism is what is keeping all of this stuff, like, well, why don't, if all of these companies just made it free, then everyone would have something, but then the company wouldn't be a thing anymore, and then you wouldn't have the abundance of the water or the food. And so this
3
is
million die from...
Look, just like a lot of like the Prager stuff, I think is ridiculous. I think that this is sort of ridiculous too, and I think that's what Mr. Beat is trying to point out. I think these are terms that are so like religious, sports like terms. And what I mean by religious like or sports team like terms is that it seems like if you have a sports team that you love, you're always going to love that sports team no matter what, and you're always going to, you know, argue whatever. And and like religious in that you believe it's true and you are not going to be convinced it's not true. And I think that's what a lot of people are stuck in the rut with both of these. It's no, capitalism is the way, socialism, communism sucks and will always suck, or capitalism sucks, it provides nothing, it only takes, and socialism is perfect. This has to stop, in my opinion, and look at it a way more like Mr. Beat looks at it, and just, you know, these terms have become so manipulated by what people want it to be, and then they accuse others of being a commie or capitalist. And so, again, yeah, I think a big thing is that that's my thoughts, okay? Is it seems like capitalism has a ton of flaws, but it at least is proven to be a system that has some basis in reality, whereas communism is an idea that I have to admit I think is very, where is it?
Share every,
like, where everyone is
good,
people are equal, you know, everyone is equal in what they receive and what they are entitled to, or according to their need or whatnot. And it makes so much sense, right? And everything, but I think that that is way too simple in looking at how people are going to react. So I think there's a difference between it would be great if people acted this way versus being realistic in how people are going to act. And I think the answer is somewhere in between, where it seems to be. And Mr. Beat says that most countries in the world are in between, but I would argue that there isn't a single country in the world that is purely capitalist or purely communist, right? I don't think there's a single one. I think there are different degrees of how much it's implemented, but I think sticking with the capitalist framework, but keep attaching on socialist policies to make stuff more equitable gradually is better than just thinking that the only good can happen if you get rid of capitalism, and being so confident in that, I think, is a little scary. And I don't know if people are it feels like people who are so anti-capitalist and pro-communist, pro-socialist, or whatever, they seem to think that everything in society is just default. Like, every good thing in society is default. Capitalism had nothing to do with it, and it's just what will always stay here. And then if you get rid of it, it'll all stay, and then we can apply socialism. And I think that is extremely simplistic and dangerous to think that way, because you could throw away. All right, so I have my opinions on this stuff. Obviously, I try to be like Mr. Beat, right, and listen to both sides, which I think I did. But I have my own biases myself, guys. I would love to see what you have to say. I hope you learned something, and of course can teach me something down there. I look forward to seeing it, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.